Picture a road surrounded by darkness, where the only sound is the steady rhythm of rain hitting the ground. This is where our story takes place, on a rural road late at night, far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The kind of road that feels a little lonely, a little eerie, especially when it's shrouded in a heavy downpour. Meet Emma, our main character. She's a young woman in her 20s, driving car after a long day. Emma works hard and often finds herself on this road late at night. She's familiar with its twists and turns, the way the trees look like shadows in the dark. But tonight feels different to her. Maybe it's the way the rain is falling harder than usual, or how the darkness seems to press in a little closer. Emma is sensible and down to earth, not usually one to get scared easily. She's the kind of person who finds logical explanations for everything. But tonight, as she drives through the pouring rain, trying to see through the foggy windows, she can't shake off a feeling of unease. Little does she know, this drive home will be unlike any other she's had before. As Emma continued her drive down the lonely road, the rain seemed to fall even harder. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up, and the world outside looked blurry and distant. That's when something unusual caught her eye. In a flash, Emma saw a shadowy figure by the roadside. It was so quick that she wasn't sure she saw it at all. Probably just a tree or a sign. She thought to herself, trying not to be scared. But deep down, she felt a tingle of fear. The road was empty, and it was odd to see anyone out in such a storm. Then it happened again. This time, the shadow was clearer. It looked like a person standing in the rain, still and silent. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She blinked hard, but when she opened her eyes, the figure was gone. "It's just my imagination," she told herself, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. As she neared her home, she saw the shadow once more. It was closer this time, almost as if it was following her. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She drove faster, just wanting to get home and away from the strange figure. When she finally reached her house, she hurried inside, locking the door behind her. She peered out the window, expecting to see nothing. But what she saw made her heart stop. Wet footprints leading up to her front door, as if someone, or something, had followed her home in the rain. Emma realized this was no ordinary night, and what she saw on the road was no ordinary shadow. Inside her house, Emma's heart was pounding like a drum. She stood there for a moment, staring at the wet footprints on her doorstep. She knew she had to be brave, to find out what was happening. Taking a deep breath, she decided to look outside again. This time, the night was quiet, the rain had slowed, and there was no sign of anyone. The footprints seemed to lead nowhere. Emma tried to make sense of it all. Could someone really have followed me? She wondered, but the more she thought about it, the less it made sense. There was no other car on the road, no place for someone to hide in the storm. And yet, the footprints were real, right there on her doorstep. That night, Emma didn't sleep much. She kept going over everything in her mind, but no clear answer came. In the morning, the rain had stopped, and the footprints were gone, washed away as if they had never been there. Emma was left with more questions than answers. What had she seen on the road? Who or what had left those footprints? She might never know. But one thing was certain. She would never forget that rainy night, the night she encountered the mysterious shadow on the road. Story 2. Imagine an old Victorian house standing tall and alone on a rainy night. The kind of house that has seen many years, with windows that reflect the lightning and walls that creak with every gust of wind. This is where our next story, The Whispering Attic, begins. In this house, we meet our main character, John. John is a middle-aged man, curious, and a bit adventurous. He loves old houses with histories and stories to tell. That's why he chose to move into this Victorian home, despite the rumors that it was haunted. He didn't believe in such things. To him, every creak and groan of the house was just a part of its charm. John's first night in the house is during a particularly fierce storm. As he settles in, surrounded by unpacked boxes and antique furniture, he feels a sense of excitement. He's ready to start this new chapter of his life, in a house filled with mystery and character. Little does he know, the house has more to it than just old wood and dusty carpets. John's first night in the old Victorian house was a stormy one. The rain beat against the windows, and the wind howled, making the whole house seem alive. As he lay in bed, listening to the storm, he started to hear something else, a faint whispering sound. At first, John thought it was just the wind, but the whispering seemed too clear, too deliberate. Curious, John got out of bed to investigate. The sound seemed to be coming from above him, from the attic. This was strange because the attic was supposed to be empty and locked. As he walked up the narrow stairs to the attic door, the whispering grew louder. It was like voices, many voices, all speaking at once, but too soft to make out the words. John stood in front of the attic door, his hand on the cold old doorknob. He hesitated. Part of him wanted to open the door and look inside, but another part of him was afraid of what he might find. The house was silent except for the whispering voices on the other side of the door. Taking a deep breath, John slowly turned the knob and pushed the door open. The attic was dark, the only light coming from the lightning outside. The whispering stopped suddenly, leaving only the sound of the storm. John stepped inside, trying to see in the dark, but there was nothing. No one there, just an empty attic with old furniture covered in dust. Feeling uneasy, John quickly left the attic and went back to bed. But even as he tried to sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Those voices in the attic, where had they come from? And why did they stop so suddenly? The morning after the storm, John woke up with the previous night's events still fresh in his mind. The whispers in the attic had felt so real, yet he had found nothing. After a cup of coffee, he decided to investigate the attic again, this time in daylight. As he entered the attic, the memories of last night made him nervous, but he pushed on. The daylight made the attic less intimidating, just an old room filled with memories and dust. That's when he noticed something he hadn't seen in the dark. An old diary, lying on a table, covered in a thick layer of dust. Curiosity got the better of John. He opened the diary and began to read. It belonged to a previous resident of the house, a woman who had lived there many years ago. In the diary, she wrote about her life, her joys and her sorrows. But as John read on, he noticed a pattern. She often wrote about hearing whispers in the house, especially during storms, just like he had. The more John read, the more he felt connected to the woman's experiences. She had felt scared and confused, just like him. In her last entry, she wrote about finding peace, accepting that some things in the house couldn't be explained. She chose to live with the mystery rather than be afraid of it. John closed the diary, feeling a strange sense of relief. Maybe he wasn't alone in what he experienced. Maybe the house did have secrets, but they weren't there to harm him. He decided to stay in the house, to embrace its mysteries, just like the woman in the diary had. From that day on, whenever he heard the whispers, he listened, acknowledging them as a part of his new intriguing home. Story 3. Let's move to a small, cozy suburban home, the kind with a welcoming front porch and a garden out back. This house is nestled in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knows each other. It's a place of comfort and safety. But on this particular rainy night, it becomes a setting for something unexplained. Our main character is Alex, a high school student, wise beyond their years, but still with that touch of teenage curiosity and boldness. Alex's parents are away for the weekend, leaving Alex home alone. It's not the first time, and Alex isn't nervous about it. They like the peace and quiet, the freedom to stay up late and watch movies. As the rain starts to pour and the thunder rumbles, Alex settles in for a cozy night. They make some popcorn, grab a blanket, and turn on their favorite movie. The house feels safe, familiar, but tonight, It also feels just a bit different. Maybe it's the storm, or maybe it's something else, something about to change Alex's perception of their ordinary home. As the night grew darker and the rain continued to pour, Alex felt a chill that wasn't just from the cold. Sitting on the couch, they glanced towards the window. That's when they saw something strange. A reflection that didn't make sense. It looked like the outline of a person standing in the room, right behind them. Alex turned around quickly, heart racing, but there was no one there. They were alone in the room. Confused, Alex walked over to the window, peering outside, then back at their reflection. But the figure was still there in the glass, standing silently. Trying to stay calm, Alex thought it must be a trick of the light, a shadow from the storm. They moved around the room, switching on more lights, but the figure in the reflection remained. It was eerie, like it was watching them. Alex couldn't shake off the feeling of being observed. It was as if the figure in the reflection wanted to be seen, to be noticed. They tried to ignore it, to go back to their movie, but their eyes kept being drawn to the window, to the mysterious figure that was there, but not there. The night felt longer, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil inside. Alex was torn between fear and a deep curiosity. Who was this figure? Why did it appear only in the reflection, and why now? These questions whirled in Alex's mind as they watched the storm outside, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon them. The night passed slowly for Alex, with the figure in the reflection never leaving their sight. As dawn approached and the first light of morning entered the room, something changed. Alex looked at the window and saw that the reflection was gone. The room was just as it had always been, ordinary and familiar. Still puzzled, Alex decided to investigate. They looked around the house, checking every room, but everything was normal. No sign of any intruders, nothing out of place. The feeling of being watched had disappeared with the night. Later that day, Alex talked to their neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, an elderly lady who had lived in the neighborhood for years. When Alex mentioned the strange reflection, Mrs. Thompson's face turned serious. She told Alex about the previous resident, a young man who looked remarkably like Alex and had mysteriously disappeared many years ago. His reflection, she said, was sometimes seen by the subsequent residents, always during stormy nights. Alex listened, a chill running down their spine. The story was hard to believe, yet it made a strange kind of sense. It was as if the young man's presence was still lingering in the house, visible only under certain conditions. From that day on, Alex saw the house in a new light. They felt a connection to its past, to the young man who once called it home. The reflection never appeared again, but Alex would always remember that stormy night and the mysterious figure in the window. As we come to the end of our journey through these rainy night terrors, let's take a moment to reflect. Tonight, we shared 3 stories, each filled with mystery and fear, all happening on dark, stormy nights. From Emma's chilling encounter with the shadow on the road to the unexplained whispers in an old attic and the eerie reflection in a window, these stories remind us of the power of the unknown. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the rainy night terrors. Sleep well, if you can, and keep an eye on the shadows.